Hey everyone, on today's episode, I'm going to talk about the show 5 Days at Memorial, which is currently streaming on Apple TV+. We'll get into how the show sort of mirrored my Hurricane Katrina experience and ways in which it ventured away from that. Hope you stay tuned. Hey everyone, I'm BJ Brunious, and I wanted to basically kind of have a little bit of a discussion about this show, 5 Days at Memorial. There are going to be some spoilers here, so if you have not seen the show, now would be the time to go and take a look at it if you can stream Apple TV. It's just to try and get an idea of what was really good and accurate representation of what that period of time was during the storm and in the aftermath of the storm. And then there's some areas where I feel as though they kind of fell short. So if you haven't seen the show, again, there's going to be spoilers. You can go watch it and then come back. Hopefully you do come back. And so let's get into it. So I wrote a story about my experience prior to or leading up to the storm, during the actual storm, and then in the aftermath of the storm. Obviously, this is not my experience. I was not at this particular hospital. I can't speak to other people's experience, but there are some aspects of the show that I feel as though really mirrored my experience and the way in which they tried to get across how the conditions deteriorated. Some of those parts I thought were spot on. It's been 17 years. I can't believe it's been that long. I mean, it feels like yesterday. But one of the things that I noticed when I made my escape is looking at the city. The first immediate thing that came to my mind when I was able to see the city sort of from above was that it looked like a movie. It did not look real. It felt like this was just a movie set that was created, for a blockbuster Hollywood movie. It did not feel like this was my reality, even though it very much so was, because I was very intentional about what I was taking in at that time, because I felt as though it was really pertinent to my personal safety. It was imperative that I be hyper aware of what my surroundings were, of what my environment was. So there are things, believe it or not, in the show that triggered my memory. I was like, oh my God, I remember that. So the first episode is, genuinely about the hospital preparing for the storm. New Orleans has been through many storms. We've had many hurricane scares. Yeah, they told us it was going to be bad, but the people who stayed were just like, well, we always leave and nothing ever happens. There was this sense that this will blow over, we'll be fine afterwards, which, in all honesty, was my opinion as well. I thought, maybe it may flood a little bit, but New Orleans floods all the time, so that's not anything out of the ordinary. And that's kind of what everybody else on the show thought.
Good morning, everybody. Morning. Not stay in your office like the rest of the doctors? In it together, right?
It's like camping.
We could use a campfire. I hate it when they crank up the AC.
What's that? Can opener.
That's all you brought? Some crackers, tuna fish, and a can opener.
Worst comes to worst, I figure we'll be here 3 days at the most.
First hurricane at the hospital?
Yes, it is. All right, is there a problem?
No, it's good you're optimistic, that's all.
Well, how about we just hope we don't have to find out the hard way whether it's too much or too little?
Yeah. Sure.
Now, in this particular scene, you can kind of get a feeling that they know something's not right, that preparation for this particular storm seems to be different than preparations for previous storms. But at the same time, there is still the the idea that we've been through this before, we know how this is going to go, and we have no reason to believe that it will go any differently than any other either hurricane scare or hurricane that has affected the city of New Orleans. So you certainly get that here. Another part, as the storm is approaching and they're going through the hurricane preparedness manual and what happens when you have to evacuate, and there's a particular part that is very reminiscent, not only reminiscent, but is a really good, accurate depiction of what it looked like, and it's not for the reasons that you think. Take a look.
I'm not having a very good feeling about any of this. I'm concerned about what happens to the hospital if it's flooded.
This storm is a Cat 5, like how they keep saying on TV. Even if it's Category 4 and it pushes a lake or river over a levee, hospital sits 3 feet below sea level. It's not going to take much to flood the basement, maybe even the first floor.
Now, one of the things that you'll notice here that I wanted you to see is just sort of the realization that, this ain't kind of going the way we thought it was going to go. The other thing that I wanted you all to take notice of, and I hope you did, was the whiteout. Like you can see right here, it was completely white. You could not see out of the windows because the rain and the wind was so strong. So I thought that that was really good, a really good way of sort of depicting what it was like, because you could not see what was going on outside. This is a very good representation of what it looked like. I always called it whiteout, like it was completely white outside, and you could not see anything that was going on, so you didn't know how bad or how good it was getting. And if you take a look here, you can really get an idea of this is what it looked like when I looked out of my window. Now, the next scene I'm going to show you, which is from episode 1, is something that I think was brilliantly depicted because it is exactly what I saw. I could normally see the Superdome directly from my apartment bedroom window. The depiction of what happens to the roof of the Superdome is exactly as I remember it. So let's take a look. It was almost like it was being peeled off. I'm not sure how they were able to capture how accurate of a depiction of the roof coming off of the Superdome. That was spot on.
Close your eyes. Hey, close your eyes. Okay, it's gonna be okay.
Thank you for your protection. We need your protection. Thank you for your divine hands of protection, your shield, Lord. Thank you. Thank you for your mercy. Comfort us, protect us. Thank you. Thank you for your divine hands of protection, your shield, Lord. Thank you. God help us.
Now that's how episode 1 ends. I have some feelings about that part, that small little scene where she is like praying and it sort of only lasts about 45 seconds. That scene was pretty scary, and what I think is that it was a good representation of what it was like, just much longer. Those conditions that were depicted went on for hours. It was very, very scary. Because your house is swaying side to side, you don't know at what point your roof is going to give. Obviously, the windows are blowing out at this point. Debris is flying all over the place. And I thought it was a great depiction. The only critique I have of it is that it wasn't long enough, because it certainly was just as bad as you saw it for a really, really long time. It sounded like a freight train for hours. You could hear the siding from homes and buildings peeling off, the sound of metal crunching. There was a crane that was swaying side to side, and you just didn't know at what point it was going to fall. Where I was, we lost electricity before the storm even made landfall. I lost electricity maybe at 2 o'clock in the morning. Their conditions were a little bit better because they had air conditioning, they had electricity, everything was still kind of okay. So that's going to wrap it up for my review of episode 1 of 5 Days at Memorial. In episode 2, I'm going to discuss the second episode of 5 Days at Memorial and sort of, again, explain the parallels in which I can certainly relate and some things that I can't relate to. Doesn't mean that they didn't happen, but some things that I can't relate to. But overall, this show is really good, a good depiction. It's got a lot of triggering if you're from New Orleans and if you endured that storm. It can be triggering. You've got to watch it in parts. I would certainly recommend that. But stay tuned. Episode 2 coming up.